Hello, cherished listeners, and welcome to a journey back in time to an era where humanity was forged in the crucible of survival. Settle in, relax, and let the ancient world unfold before you. If you enjoy this tale, please consider subscribing to our channel and let us know in the comments where you're listening from today. Your support means the world. The world of 1 million BC was a symphony of raw, untamed power, a brutal masterpiece painted in shades of struggle and fleeting triumph. For Kale, a young man barely into his 20th sun cycle, existence was a constant gnawing hunger and the pervasive chill of fear. He was a creature of the forest, born into a small, nomadic tribe that clung to life on the fringes of vast, ancient woodlands, their lives dictated by the rhythm of the seasons and the menacing shadows of predators. Each dawn was not a promise of peace, but a stark reminder of the hunt, both for sustenance and for survival against those who hunted them. Cal's body bore the testament of this harsh reality: lean muscle honed by relentless movement, scars etched onto his skin like ancient glyphs, and eyes that held the wary intelligence of an animal perpetually alert. His tribe, a scattering of 20-odd souls, were children of the earth, their wisdom passed down through grunts and gestures, their understanding of the world woven into the rustle of leaves and the roar of the mighty river that snaked through their territory. They knew the edible roots, the safest paths through the thorny undergrowth, and the telltale signs of a lurking saber-toothed cat. But knowledge, however profound, offered only a thin shield against the sheer, overwhelming might of nature. Their tools were crude: jagged stones chipped into rudimentary axes, spears tipped with fire-hardened wood, and animal hides for warmth. Every resource was precious, every kill a blessing, every lost life a wound that bled through the fabric of their small community. Kale remembered the stories his elder, old Nara, would tell around the meager warmth of a smoldering, carefully guarded ember, tales of great hunts, of brave warriors, and of the spirits that roam the land. But even in those tales, the underlying theme was always vulnerability. They were prey, always, to the elements, to hunger, and to the colossal beasts that ruled this primeval domain. One crisp morning, as the first golden fingers of sunlight pierced the canopy, Kale felt the familiar ache in his stomach. Today, he would hunt. He gripped his spear, its tip smoothed by countless hours of patient work, and looked out at the misty forest. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and unseen life. A new day, a new battle for existence had begun. Kale moved through the undergrowth with the silent grace of a shadow, his bare feet expertly finding purchase on roots and stones, his senses acutely attuned to every rustle and snap. He was tracking a herd of deer, their faint scent carried on the morning breeze, their prints clear in the soft, dew-kissed earth. Hunting was a sacred dance, a meticulous ritual of patience and cunning. He knew the deer's habits, their watering holes, their favorite grazing spots. He knew that one wrong step, one misplaced twig, could send them scattering, and another day's hunger would tighten its grip. Beside him, his younger brother Lyra moved with less experience but equal determination. Lyra, barely 15, still had the gangly awkwardness of youth, but his eyes held the same fierce spark that burned in Kel's. They were a hunting pair, a bond forged in shared peril and the silent understanding that their lives depended on each other. Their father, a revered hunter named Burrow, had taught them everything. Burrow, a man of immense strength and quiet wisdom, had fallen to a great cave bear during the last harsh winter, leaving a void that still echoed in the small tribe's heart. Kale felt his father's presence in the way the wind whispered through the leaves, in the unwavering strength of his spear hand. He had to be Burrow now, for Lyra, for their mother, and for the tribe. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher, casting dappled light through the dense foliage. The deer were elusive, leading them deeper into unfamiliar territory, closer to the jagged teeth of the Whisperwind Peaks, a place where legends of ancient spirits and monstrous beasts resided. Cale felt a prickle of unease, a primal instinct warning him. But hunger was a more powerful master than fear. He signaled to Lyra, pointing to a patch of freshly disturbed earth, indicating a recent bedding spot. They were close. The air grew colder as they ascended a slight rise, the vegetation thinning. Suddenly, a sound. Not the deer, but a low, guttural growl that vibrated through the earth itself. Cale froze, his heart hammering against his ribs. Lyra, too, stiffened, his eyes wide with a terror Cale knew all too well. It was too deep, too powerful for any known predator. This was something else. A large, shaggy shadow detached itself from the gloom of an ancient pine grove ahead. It was a beast of immense proportions, larger than any cave bear, with tusks that curved like ancient moons and eyes that glowed with malevolent intelligence. A woolly rhinoceros, a creature of immense power and unpredictable fury. It had been disturbed from its slumber, and it was not pleased. Cale tightened his grip on his spear, the wood suddenly feeling impossibly light in his trembling hands. The hunter had become the hunted. The woolly rhinoceros, an ancient titan, let out another earth-shaking bellow, its breath pluming in the cool air. Its small, intelligent eyes fixed on Cale and Lyra, blazing with a fury that promised swift, brutal destruction. The ground trembled as it took a heavy, deliberate step, its immense bulk a living battering ram. Cale's mind raced, a whirlwind of instinct and primal fear. To run was to invite pursuit, and the beast, despite its size, could move with astonishing speed. To stand and fight was almost certainly suicide. But Lyra was behind him, frozen, a deer caught in the gaze of a predator. Cale had to act, not just for himself, but for his brother, a promise he had made to his fallen father. He let out a piercing yell, a primal challenge designed to distract, to draw the beast's attention solely to him. He waved his spear, making himself appear as large and threatening as possible. The rhinoceros, momentarily confused by the sudden noise, hesitated, its massive head swiveling. This was Cal's chance. "Run, Lyra, to the rocks," he bellowed, pointing towards a jagged outcrop of boulders that offered some semblance of cover. Lyra, startled from his trance, stumbled backward, then turned and bolted, his gangly limbs pumping, propelled by sheer terror. Cale didn't wait to see if he obeyed. He knew the beast would focus on the more immediate threat. As Lyra scrambled towards the rocks, the rhinoceros lowered its massive head, its colossal horn glinting menacingly. It began its charge, a thundering avalanche of muscle and bone. The ground vibrated, the air filled with the beast's guttural roars and the pounding of its hooves. Cale stood his ground for a heartbeat, calculating, his eyes fixed on the charging behemoth. He knew he couldn't stop it, couldn't even wound it fatally with his simple spear. His only hope was evasion, to use the terrain, to be faster, smarter. At the last possible second, as the beast's hot, putrid breath washed over him, Cale dove to the side, rolling clumsily behind a thick, gnarled tree trunk. The rhinoceros, unable to change direction swiftly, slammed into the tree with a sickening crunch. Wood splintered, bark flew, and the entire tree shuddered. Cale felt the impact through the ground, a raw display of power that left him gasping. He scrambled to his feet, heart pounding, his muscles screaming. The rhinoceros, momentarily dazed, shook its massive head, then turned, its eyes scanning for its elusive prey. Cale saw Lyra peering from behind the rocks, his face pale with terror. Cale knew this could not go on forever. The beast was too powerful, too relentless. He needed a plan, something more than just desperate evasion. He needed to escape, and he needed to do it now, before the beast's fury found its target once more. The rhinoceros, its anger undiminished, circled the shattered tree, snorting impatiently. Cale knew he couldn't stay hidden there for long. He glanced at Lyra, still cowering behind the rocks, and a fierce resolve hardened his gaze. He had to draw the beast away, give Lyra a chance to escape to safety. With a desperate surge of adrenaline, Cale broke cover, darting towards a dense thicket of thorny bush, hoping the tangle would impede the beast's charge. He let out another shout, a defiant cry that echoed through the forest. The rhinoceros immediately responded, its focus shifting back to him. It charged, a whirlwind of muscle and horn, tearing through the smaller vegetation as if it were parchment. Cale, however, was smaller, more agile. He weaved and dodged, using every ounce of his strength and agility to stay one step ahead of the behemoth. He could feel the ground shake beneath him, hear the beast's enraged snorts just inches behind. He scrambled up a low, rocky incline, his hands raw from gripping the sharp stone. The rhinoceros, too heavy and cumbersome for such terrain, faltered, its massive legs struggling for purchase. It let out a frustrated bellow, its horns scraping against the rocks. Cale used this momentary respite to gain distance, pushing his burning lungs to their limit. He ran towards a narrow ravine he remembered from his father's old hunting tales, a place where the earth split open into a deep, jagged chasm. It was a dangerous gamble, but it was their only hope. He reached the edge, skidding to a halt, the sheer drop a dizzying abyss below him. Lyra, following from a safer distance, arrived moments later, his face streaked with tears and dirt, his breath coming in ragged gasps. "Jump!" Cale yelled, pointing to a precarious, moss-covered log that spanned a particularly narrow section of the ravine. It was old, weathered, and looked barely strong enough to hold a squirrel, let alone a man. Lyra hesitated, fear etched on his face. The rhinoceros was close now, its thunderous charge echoing behind them. Cale knew there was no time for hesitation. "Now, Lyra," he commanded, his voice raw with urgency. With a terrified whimper, Lyra launched himself across the gap, his slender body arcing over the abyss. He landed awkwardly on the other side, scrambling to his feet, his eyes wide with terror and relief. Cale didn't wait. He took a running leap, his heart in his throat, and landed heavily on the far bank, rolling to absorb the impact. He looked back just as the rhinoceros reached the edge of the ravine. The log, weakened by their passage, groaned ominously. The beast, blinded by rage, attempted to follow, its massive foreleg testing the old wood. With a deafening crack, the log splintered, sending shards of ancient timber raining into the chasm. The rhinoceros roared in frustration, trapped on the wrong side of the impassable gap. They were safe for now. But they were deep in unfamiliar territory, far from their tribe, and the sun was beginning its slow descent towards the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. The night, even more so than the day, belonged to the predators. Cale put an arm around Lyra, who was still trembling. They had escaped, but their ordeal was far from over. The real challenge, Cale knew, was just beginning. The last rays of the sun bled from the sky, taking with them the warmth and the illusion of safety. The forest, once a tapestry of greens and browns, now transformed into a canvas of deepening shadows and eerie silences, broken only by the chirping of unseen insects and the distant, chilling cry of a night hunter. Cale and Lyra huddled together beneath the meager shelter of a low-hanging rock ledge, their backs pressed against the cold, unforgiving stone. The air grew colder with each passing moment, a biting chill that seeped into their bones, a stark reminder of their vulnerability. They had no fire, no protective circle of light and warmth that their tribe usually cherished. Their crude animal hide coverings offered little solace against the encroaching cold. Hunger, a dull ache that had been overshadowed by the day's terror, now asserted itself with renewed vigor. Their stomachs rumbled, a painful, empty protest. Cale knew they needed food, but venturing out in the darkness was a death wish. The night belonged to the true predators, beasts whose eyes could pierce the gloom and whose senses were far keener than their own. He could hear them, the rustle of leaves that wasn't the wind, the soft padding of paws, the occasional blood-curdling shriek of a creature caught in another's deadly embrace. Lyra shivered violently, not just from the cold, but from a profound, childlike fear. Cale wrapped an arm around his brother, pulling him closer, offering what little warmth and comfort he could. He felt the tremor in Lyra's small frame and wished he could offer more. He wished for the comforting presence of his mother, for the reassuring wisdom of old Nara, for the strength of his father. But they were alone, isolated in this vast, indifferent wilderness. Cale tried to recall everything his father had taught him about surviving the night without fire. Find a high place, use natural barriers, mask your scent, stay absolutely still. But none of it felt adequate against the crushing weight of the unknown that pressed in on them from all sides. He gripped his spear, its familiar weight a small comfort, but he knew it was a flimsy defense against the true horrors of the night. He yearned for the flickering, dancing light of a campfire, for its warmth, for the way it kept the encroaching darkness at bay, carving out a small, safe haven in the vast wilderness. Their tribe guarded their embers fiercely, nurturing them, for fire was life, fire was protection. But they had lost their ember in their frantic escape, and now they were left with nothing but the chilling darkness. As the moon, a sliver of bone in the black sky, cast faint, silver light through the trees, Cale's mind drifted. He remembered the stories of how fire was first brought to their people, a gift from the sky, a lightning bolt that struck a tree. He wondered if such a miracle could ever happen again, if they could ever harness that power. But for now, that was a dream. The reality was the bitter cold, the gnawing hunger, and the unseen eyes watching from the shadows. Cale closed his eyes, forcing himself to remain alert, to listen, to wait for the dawn that felt impossibly far away. Tonight, they were truly prey, utterly at the mercy of the untamed world. He knew he had to survive this night, for Lyra, for the memory of his father, and for the tribe he hoped one day to return to. But how, without the most fundamental tool of all? The night wore on, an endless tapestry of cold and fear. Cale found himself drifting in and out of a fitful, shallow sleep, every snap of a twig, every distant howl, jolting him awake. Lyra, curled tightly against him, eventually succumbed to exhaustion, his breathing shallow and even. Cale envied his brother's ability to find even a moment of unconscious peace. As the first faint hint of gray began to paint the eastern sky, promising the grudging return of dawn, Cale's eyes caught a glint of something unusual in the gloom. It was a peculiar stone, darker than the surrounding granite, almost obsidian-like, lying half-buried near the base of their rock shelter. Curiosity, a dangerous but often rewarding trait, stirred within him. He reached out, his fingers numb with cold, and picked it up. It was smooth, heavy, and strangely cold to the touch. As he examined it, his thumb rubbed against a sharp, flinty edge. Instinctively, he scraped it against another, harder stone, a dull, gray piece of quartz he had idly picked up earlier. A tiny, almost imperceptible spark flickered into existence, a brief, fleeting point of light in the lingering darkness. Cale blinked, then tried again. Scrape. Another spark, brighter this time, dancing for a fraction of a second before vanishing. His heart gave a little jolt. He remembered old Nara's stories, the ones about the skyfire. Could this be it? Could these mundane stones hold the secret? He began to experiment, rubbing the flint against the quartz with more force, more intent. Each scrape produced a spark, small and ephemeral, but undeniably there. A strange, almost alien sensation bloomed in his chest, a mix of wonder, disbelief, and a nascent, terrifying hope. He remembered the dried moss and brittle twigs he had gathered earlier, hoping to fashion a crude bed. He pulled a handful of the driest tinder he could find from beneath his hide, forming a small, loose nest. With trembling hands, he held the tinder close to the stones, his breath held in anticipation. Scrape, scrape, scrape. More sparks flew, one landing directly on the moss. For a moment, nothing. Then a wisp of smoke, thin and tentative, curled upwards. Cal's eyes widened. He blew gently, carefully, his breath a soft caress, trying to coax the fragile smoke into something more. The wisp grew, thickened. A tiny orange glow appeared, barely visible. He blew again, more steadily this time. The glow brightened, pulsed. A microscopic flame, no bigger than his thumbnail, flickered to life, dancing on the edge of the moss. It was so small, so fragile, yet in that moment, it was the most beautiful, powerful thing he had ever witnessed. Lyra stirred, woken by the faint light and Cal's hushed gasps of awe. He sat up, rubbing the sleep from his eyes, and stared at the tiny flame with a mixture of confusion and wonder. "Fire?" he whispered, his voice barely audible. Cal nodded, his eyes fixed on the precious spark. "Fire," he repeated, a tremor of triumph in his voice. He carefully added a few tiny twigs, nursing the nascent flame, protecting it from the morning breeze. The world was still dark, still cold, still dangerous, but now a small, defiant beacon had been lit. The impossible had just become real. The tiny flame, though minuscule, cast a disproportionately large shadow against the rock face, a testament to its profound significance. Cal felt a surge of exhilaration, quickly followed by an overwhelming sense of responsibility. This was not the vast, uncontrollable skyfire of legend, but a fragile, man-made spark born from his own hands. He knew how precious it was, how easily it could be extinguished, plunging them back into the unforgiving darkness. He carefully, painstakingly added more fuel, the smallest, driest twigs he could find, then thin strips of bark. Each piece was placed with the reverence of a sacred offering. The flame, greedy and alive, licked at the new fuel, growing bolder, its orange and yellow hues deepening. Lyra, his initial awe giving way to an eager curiosity, watched with wide, fascinated eyes. He reached out a hesitant hand towards the warmth, then quickly pulled it back as the heat touched his fingertips. "It bites," he whispered, a hint of fear mixed with his wonder. Cal grunted in agreement. "It is a wild thing, Lyra. We must learn its ways." He remembered the tribe's fires, always tended by the elders, treated with a respect bordering on worship. They spoke of fire having a spirit, a fickle temperament that demanded constant attention. Now, he understood why. He spent the next hour meticulously feeding the growing fire, learning its rhythm, understanding how different types of wood caught and burned. He discovered that thin, dry wood caught quickly, but burned out fast, while thicker, denser pieces provided more sustained heat, but took longer to ignite. He felt a surge of pride, a sense of connection to this primal force. The warmth began to spread, pushing back the lingering chill of the night. The shadows around them receded, creating a small, illuminated circle of safety. Cal could finally see Lyra's face clearly, the lines of fear and exhaustion softened by the gentle glow. He saw hope there, a reflection of the hope that was now blossoming in his own chest. The scent of wood smoke, a familiar and comforting aroma from their distant tribal camp, filled the air, a potent reminder of home. He felt a profound shift within him. For so long, they had been at the mercy of the elements, shivering in the cold, always seeking the sun's meager warmth. Now, he held a piece of the sun in his hands, a controllable, usable source of heat and light. He knew, instinctively, that this discovery was more than just a momentary reprieve. It was a turning point, not just for him and Lyra, but potentially for their entire tribe. But first, they had to survive, and they had to learn how to keep this new, fragile power alive. He looked at the surrounding forest, now bathed in the nascent light of dawn, and saw it differently. The trees were no longer just obstacles or hiding places. They were fuel, raw material for this new, incredible force. The world, though still dangerous, suddenly seemed less overwhelming, less utterly hostile. They had found fire, and with it, a sliver of control over their destiny. This was only the beginning. With the fire now burning steadily, a small, defiant beacon against the vastness of the wilderness, Cale felt a primal sense of relief wash over him. The warmth was a physical comfort, seeping into his chilled bones, but the light was a balm to his spirit. The menacing shadows that had danced at the edges of his vision all night were now held at bay, pushed back by the flickering orange glow. Lyra, emboldened by the fire's presence, began to explore the immediate vicinity, gathering more small twigs and dry leaves, eager to contribute. His earlier terror had receded, replaced by a childlike fascination. Cale watched him, a small smile touching his lips. It was good to see his brother's spirit rekindled. The fire did more than just provide heat and light. It transformed their immediate environment. The air around them began to warm, pushing away the damp, heavy chill of the prehistoric morning. The scent of wood smoke, once a distant memory, was now thick and comforting, a powerful symbol of home and safety. Cale noticed that the smaller, nocturnal creatures, which had been so bold in the darkness, now kept their distance. The rustlings in the undergrowth were fewer, the distant howls less frequent. Even the air seemed to hum with a different energy, one of cautious respect for the glowing ember. Hunger, however, remained a persistent companion. They had escaped the rhinoceros, but they still had no food. Cale knew he couldn't venture far from their precious fire, not yet. It was too new, too fragile to leave unattended. He rummaged through the small pouch he carried, a collection of useful stones and dried berries he had gathered days ago. He found a few shriveled, edible roots and shared them with Lyra. They were meager, barely enough to quell the sharpest pangs, but the warmth of the fire made the simple meal feel like a feast. As they ate, Cale noticed something else. The fire was not just a deterrent, it was a tool. He looked at his spear, its wooden tip hardened by the sun and time, but still vulnerable. He thought of his father's stories, of how the ancients would use fire to harden the tips of their spears, making them stronger, sharper, deadlier. He watched the flames, a new idea sparking in his mind. Could he use this fire to improve their tools, to make them better hunters, better defenders? He picked up a fresh, straight branch, stripped it of its bark, and slowly, carefully began to pass its tip through the edge of the flame. The wood hissed and smoked, the surface blackening, hardening. The process was slow, tedious, but Cale felt a thrill of discovery. He was not just using fire. He was shaping it, making it work for him, for his survival. This small act of innovation filled him with a profound sense of empowerment. They were still vulnerable, still lost, but they now possessed a secret, a power that could change everything. Cale looked at Lyra, who was now gazing at the fire with a peaceful, almost mesmerized expression. The warmth, the light, the security, it was a powerful combination. He knew, with a certainty that settled deep in his bones, that bringing this fire back to their tribe was no longer just a desire, but a necessity. It was their path from prey to something more. The sun, now fully risen, cast long, golden shafts of light through the trees, illuminating their small, firelit sanctuary. Cale continued to tend the flames, his mind buzzing with the possibilities this new power offered. The spear tip he had hardened was noticeably stronger, more resistant to splintering. It was a crude improvement, but a significant one in a world where every advantage counted. As the morning progressed, their hunger intensified, becoming a relentless ache that overshadowed even the warmth of the fire. Cale knew they couldn't last much longer on roots and berries. He had to hunt, but leaving the fire was a risk he was still reluctant to take. He needed a way to hunt close by, a way that didn't involve abandoning their precious flame. His eyes scanned the nearby forest floor, searching. He spotted a burrow, small and unassuming, a likely home for rodents or small ground-dwelling birds. A desperate idea formed in his mind. He remembered seeing his tribe sometimes use smoke to flush out small game, but without controlled fire, it was always a dangerous hit-or-miss endeavor, often resulting in lost embers. Now, with fire at his command, he could be more precise. He carefully gathered a handful of damp leaves and green twigs, placing them on the edge of the fire, away from the hottest coals. They smoldered, producing a thick, acrid smoke that quickly drifted towards the burrow. He waited, spear ready, his senses on high alert. Moments later, a flurry of movement. A small, furry creature, a plump forest hare, bolted from the burrow, disoriented by the smoke. Kale reacted instantly, his spear flying true. The hare, caught completely by surprise, fell with a soft thud. Lyra let out a cry of triumph, running to retrieve their prize. It was a small animal, but it was meat, real meat, a promise of sustenance. Kale looked at the hare, then at the fire. Traditionally, his tribe would eat such a small creature raw, or perhaps scorch it briefly over a stolen ember if they were lucky. But now, he had a roaring fire. He remembered seeing his mother place berries near the embers to soften them, or dry strips of meat in the sun. He wondered if the fire could do more. Carefully, he cleaned the hare with a sharp stone, preparing it as his mother had taught him. He then placed it on a flat rock beside the hottest coals, not directly in the flames, but close enough for the heat to penetrate. Lyra watched, mesmerized, as the meat began to sizzle gently, a rich, savory aroma filling the air, an aroma unlike anything they had ever experienced. The smell was intoxicating, making their mouths water. After a time, Kale poked the meat with a stick. It was firm, cooked through, and had a beautiful golden brown crust. He broke off a piece, testing its temperature, then handed it to Lyra. Lyra took a hesitant bite, his eyes widening in disbelief. "It's different," he mumbled, his mouth full. "Better." Kale took a bite himself. The meat was tender, flavorful, and incredibly satisfying. The tough, sinewy raw meat they were accustomed to was transformed into something utterly delicious, easier to chew, easier to digest. This was more than just sustenance. It was a revelation. The first cooked meal. It was another profound step, a testament to the power of the fire and to Kale's growing understanding of how to wield it. The fire was not just a shield against the cold and predators. It was a tool for sustenance, a means to transform the raw, wild world into something more palatable, more sustaining. They were not just surviving. They were beginning to thrive in a small, yet significant way. The cooked hare, though small, filled them with a renewed sense of strength and purpose. The warmth in their bellies mirrored the warmth of the fire, pushing back the lingering cold and the pervasive sense of despair. Kale felt a clarity of mind he hadn't experienced since their ordeal began. He knew what he had to do. He had to take this fire, this incredible gift, back to his tribe. It was not just for their survival, but for their evolution. He looked at the crackling flames, understanding that carrying fire, keeping it alive during their journey, would be a challenge in itself. They had no clay pots, no specialized containers to transport embers. He remembered seeing old Nara carry a smoldering piece of bark wrapped in wet leaves, a precarious method at best, designed for short distances. Kale began to experiment, using his limited knowledge of materials. He found a piece of hollowed-out log, partially charred by the lightning strike that had initially intrigued him. He carefully placed some glowing embers inside, then packed it with dry moss and leaves, hoping to create a slow-burning, portable fire starter. He then wrapped the whole contraption in several layers of damp leaves, securing it with strips of fibrous bark. It was clumsy, heavy, and he wasn't sure it would work, but it was their best hope. He fashioned a makeshift sling from a piece of animal hide, allowing him to carry the ember log on his back, close to his body, protecting it from the wind and rain. Lyra, having regained his youthful energy, helped gather more dry kindling, a small bundle of twigs and bark that they could use to restart the fire if their portable ember failed. Kale knew the journey back would be fraught with danger. They were still deep in unfamiliar territory, and the rhinoceros could still be lurking. But now they had an advantage. They had fire. They could use it to scare off predators, to keep warm, and, if necessary, to cook any game they managed to catch. The journey began. Kale, leading the way, moved with a newfound confidence. He kept his eyes peeled for familiar landmarks, for any sign of the river that would eventually lead them back to their tribe's usual hunting grounds. He used the smoke from his portable ember to ward off swarms of biting insects, a small but significant comfort. As they walked, Kale couldn't help but imagine the faces of his tribe when he returned, not just with Lyra, but with the secret of fire. He pictured his mother's relief, old Mara's wonder, and the faces of the other hunters, their eyes filled with a mixture of disbelief and awe. He knew there would be resistance, fear of this new wild power, but he also knew that once they experienced its warmth, its light, its ability to transform raw meat into something delicious, they would understand. This fire was not just Kale's discovery. It was a gift for all of them, a key to a new existence. The path was long, the forest still vast and dangerous, but Kale felt a sense of purpose that propelled him forward. He was no longer just a survivor fleeing for his life. He was a bringer of light, a harbinger of change. He looked at the small, smoldering log on his back, a tiny ember of hope glowing within the ancient wood. From prey, they were slowly, painstakingly beginning their transformation. Days blurred into a relentless march through the primeval forest. Kale and Lyra faced trials of hunger, thirst, and the constant threat of predators, but the small, smoldering log on Kale's back became their lifeline. Each evening, with careful precision, Kale would coax a small fire to life from the precious ember, providing warmth, light, and a measure of protection against the encroaching darkness. They learned to sleep in shifts, one watching the flames, the other resting, their bond deepening with each shared vigil. They hunted small game, cooking it over their fire, their bodies growing stronger, their spirits more resilient. Kale's senses sharpened, his understanding of the forest growing with every passing hour. He was no longer just observing. He was actively interacting with his environment, using his intelligence and this new power to overcome obstacles that would have once seemed insurmountable. Finally, on the 7th day, Kale recognized a familiar landmark, the twin-peaked mountain that overlooked their tribe's summer hunting grounds. A surge of relief, so profound it brought tears to his eyes, washed over him. They were almost home. As they descended into the familiar valley, a faint wisp of smoke caught Kale's eye, the telltale sign of their tribe as communal fire. His heart quickened. He began to run, Lyra close behind, shouting their names, their voices hoarse but filled with joyous urgency. The tribe, a small cluster of figures around a smoldering fire pit, looked up, startled by the noise. A moment of confusion, then recognition. His mother, her face edged with worry and grief, gasped, then ran towards them, her arms outstretched. The reunion was a chaotic symphony of tears, embraces, and exclamations of disbelief. Kale and Lyra, thought lost to the wilderness, were alive, but the greatest revelation was yet to come. As the initial joyous uproar subsided, Kale carefully unslung his portable fire log. He knelt by the tribe's dying embers, which were struggling to stay alive, as was often the case after a long period of scarcity. With deliberate movements, he opened his charred log, revealing the still glowing ember within. He carefully transferred it to a nest of dry tinder, blowing gently, coaxing it to life. A small flame flickered, then grew, stronger and brighter than their tribe's own struggling fire. A hush fell over the gathered tribesmen. Old Nara, her ancient eyes wide with wonder, slowly approached. She peered at the flame, then at Kale, a look of profound astonishment on her face. Skyfire? She whispered, her voice trembling. Kale shook his head, a proud, almost defiant glint in his eyes. No, Nara, man-fire. I made it. We can make it, always. He demonstrated, pulling out his flint and quartz, showing them how the sparks flew, how they could catch in the tinder. Disbelief warred with awe on the faces of his people. Some recoiled in fear, never having seen fire created from nothing but stone. Others, like his mother, looked at him with a dawning understanding, a glimmer of hope. Kale knew it would take time for them to accept this new power, to overcome their ingrained fear of the unknown. But he also knew that he had brought them more than just warmth. He had brought them a future. The initial shock gave way to a slow, tentative acceptance. Old Nara, with her deep wisdom and respect for the old ways, became Cal's first and most ardent student. She watched his demonstrations of fire starting with an intensity that belied her age, her eyes gleaming with a new understanding. Under Cal's patient guidance, she learned how to strike the flint and quartz, how to nurture the delicate spark into a flame. Her hands, gnarled with age, became surprisingly nimble. Her acceptance was crucial. It swayed many of the hesitant tribesmen. Kale didn't just teach them how to make fire. He taught them its uses. He showed them how to harden spear tips, making their hunting weapons more effective and durable. The hunters, who had once viewed his claim with skepticism, were astounded by the tangible improvement in their tools. No longer would their wooden spears splinter so easily against tough hides or bone. He introduced them to cooked meat. The first roasted portions of a freshly caught wild boar were met with cautious curiosity, then outright delight. The tender, flavorful meat was a revelation, easier to chew, easier to digest, and far more appealing than the tough, stringy raw flesh they were accustomed to. The tribe's health visibly improved. They seemed to gain strength, their gaunt faces filling out, their energy levels rising. The communal fire pit, once a carefully guarded ember, now roared with a newfound vigor. Its warmth became a constant comfort, chasing away the pervasive chill that had been a constant companion in their lives. The light, too, was a powerful deterrent against nocturnal predators. The growls and snarls that once kept them huddled in terror now seemed to keep a respectful distance, held at bay by the dancing flames. Kale found himself transformed from a young hunter into a leader, a teacher. He shared his knowledge freely, patiently explaining the nuances of different fuels, the dangers of uncontrolled flames, and the sacred responsibility of keeping the fire alive. He taught them to gather dry kindling, to build proper fire pits, and to tend the flames with vigilance. The tribe began to change. Their diet diversified, their tools improved, and their nights became less fraught with fear. They still faced the harsh realities of 1 million BC, the colossal beasts, the unforgiving elements. But now they possessed a powerful ally, fire. It was a shield, a tool, a source of comfort, and a catalyst for innovation. Kale, watching his tribe huddled around the roaring fire, their faces illuminated by its warmth, felt a deep sense of contentment. He had not just survived. He had brought a profound change, a new dawn for his people. They were still prey in many ways, but with fire, they had taken a monumental step towards becoming something more. The journey from vulnerable to formidable had truly begun, forged in the heart of the flame he had discovered. As the tribe embraced the power of fire, a new set of challenges emerged. While the benefits were undeniable, fire was also a wild, dangerous force if not properly respected and controlled. Kale, now seen as the firebringer, took on the responsibility of establishing new protocols for its use and maintenance. He taught the children that fire was not a toy, but a living entity that demanded respect. He showed them how quickly a stray spark could ignite dry grass, how a neglected flame could consume their precious shelter. They learned to build containment circles of stone, to always have water or damp earth ready to quell an errant blaze. The tribe's entire rhythm began to revolve around the flame. Designated fire guardians were chosen, usually the older women and men who could no longer participate in demanding hunts. Their task was paramount, to ensure the communal fire never died. This responsibility, once a burden, became a position of honor and importance. Old Nara, with her keen memory and meticulous nature, became the chief fire guardian, her wisdom now extended to the nurturing of their most vital resource. The ability to make fire on demand also meant they could venture further, explore new territories, and expand their hunting grounds without the constant worry of losing their life-giving ember. Kale led scouting parties, now carrying small, portable fire-starting kits. They discovered new sources of food, new types of edible plants that could be rendered palatable by roasting, and new, safer caves for shelter. One day, during a deep forest expedition, Kale and a group of hunters stumbled upon a large, ferocious pack of dire wolves, notorious for their cunning and relentless pursuit. In the past, such an encounter would have meant a desperate, often fatal fight. But now, Kajal was armed with more than just his spear. With a roar, he ignited several small torches he had prepared, waving them furiously. The wolves, accustomed to preying on the weak and the unprotected, recoiled from the sudden, terrifying light and heat. Their eyes, usually filled with predatory hunger, now held a glimmer of fear. The scent of burning wood, an alien and frightening smell, further disoriented them. The pack, after a few hesitant growls, turned and fled into the darkness, leaving Kale and his hunters unharmed. It was a profound victory, a clear demonstration of fire's power as a weapon, a deterrent against even the most formidable predators. The hunters returned to the tribe with a new spring in their step, their chests puffed out with pride. Fire was not just for warmth and food. It was for dominance. It was a tool that shifted the balance of power, turning the tables on those who had once considered them easy prey. Kale watched his people, their faces strong and confident, gathered around the roaring fire, their laughter echoing through the night. They were no longer just surviving. They were beginning to assert their place in this harsh world, slowly but surely transforming from the hunted to the hunters. With the mastery of fire firmly established, the tribe's ingenuity began to flourish in other areas. Kale, ever the innovator, realized that fire could do more than just harden wood. He remembered seeing certain stones crack and change color when exposed to intense heat. He began to experiment, carefully placing different types of rocks into the heart of the communal fire. Many shattered, but some, particularly flint, grew more brittle, easier to chip and shape into sharper, more precise tools. This led to a revolution in toolmaking. The crude, heavy stone axes and scrapers they once relied on were slowly replaced by finer, more efficient blades. Kale discovered that by heating and then rapidly cooling certain rocks, he could create sharper edges for knives, more pointed tips for spears, and more effective scrapers for processing animal hides. Their hunting success rates soared. Wounds inflicted on game were cleaner, more lethal, reducing the risk to the hunters. Preparing hides for clothing and shelter became less arduous, leading to better protection from the elements. The tribe's shelters, once simple lean-tos, began to evolve. With better tools, they could cut and shape larger timbers, allowing for more robust, weather-resistant structures. The constant warmth of the indoor fires, carefully vented, made their homes more comfortable, especially during the brutal winter months. They were no longer merely surviving the cold. They were actively mitigating its effects. Communication also saw subtle improvements. Around the evening fires, with the flickering light illuminating their faces, Storytelling became more elaborate, more frequent. The elders, encouraged by the warmth and light, shared more detailed accounts of their history, their myths, and their practical knowledge. Kale, too, shared his experiences, his tales of encountering the rhinoceros and discovering fire becoming legendary. These stories, passed down through generations, helped to solidify their collective identity and transmit vital information. Lyra, no longer the scared boy from the wilderness, grew into a capable young man, eagerly assisting Kale in his experiments and sharing the knowledge with the younger children. He became a bridge between the old ways and the new, embodying the tribe's evolving spirit. The tribe's diet continued to expand. With fire, they could cook tough roots and tubers that were once inedible raw, breaking down their fibers and making them digestible. They learned to smoke meat and fish, preserving food for longer periods, reducing the constant pressure of day-to-day hunting. This foresight, this ability to plan for the future, was a profound shift. Kale looked at his people, no longer just a collection of individuals struggling to survive, but a community, a nascent society, forged in the crucible of necessity and empowered by the flame. They were building something, creating a future that their ancestors, living in constant fear and cold, could only have dreamed of. From prey, they were truly becoming predators of their environment, shaping it to their will, not just reacting to its whims. Seasons passed, marked by the cycles of the sun and the enduring presence of their communal fires. Kale, now a respected elder and the undisputed leader of his growing tribe, had witnessed a transformation that few could have imagined. His people, once a scattering of vulnerable individuals, now numbered almost 50 souls, a testament to their improved chances of survival. Their numbers swelled, not just from new births, but from the occasional integration of other desperate, smaller groups who, drawn by the smoke and the promise of warmth, sought refuge and knowledge. Kale welcomed them, sharing the gift of fire and the wisdom he had accumulated. He understood that strength lay in numbers and ensured knowledge. The tribe's territory expanded, not through conquest, but through confidence. They no longer feared venturing into areas once considered too dangerous. Equipped with hardened spears, fire-wielding torches, and the knowledge of how to build temporary camps with controlled fires, they could push back against the ancient wilderness. Large predators, once their greatest threat, now often avoided them. The scent of human smoke, the sight of dancing flames became a warning sign, a signal that this territory was claimed by a new, formidable force. Encounters with saber-toothed cats or cave bears, while still dangerous, were no longer guaranteed disasters. Kale's hunters, working in coordinated groups, could use fire to drive the beasts into traps or to corner them, making the hunt more efficient and less perilous. The tribe became more sedentary, establishing more permanent settlements near abundant water sources and sheltered valleys. They learned to utilize the long-burning embers to clear patches of dense forest for cultivation, planting wild grains and tubers they had learned to identify and domesticate. This was a monumental step, transitioning from pure hunter-gatherers to nascent agriculturalists, securing a more reliable food source. Kale, his face lined with the wisdom of experience, often sat by the largest fire, watching his grandchildren play. They grew up knowing only the warmth and light of fire, never experiencing the gnawing cold and terror that had defined his own youth. They were born into a world where man was no longer just prey, but a force to be reckoned with, a creature capable of bending nature to its will. He remembered the desperate, shivering boy he once was, huddled in the darkness, praying for a warmth that seemed impossible. Now he saw his people thriving, laughing, planning for the future, all thanks to that single, fragile spark he had coaxed from 2 stones. The transformation was complete. They had not merely adapted to the environment, they were beginning to shape it. The last fire, the one he had brought forth from nothing, had become the first fire of a new age, an age where humanity would rise slowly but surely to claim its place as the dominant species on the planet. From prey, they had truly become predator, not just of beasts, but of the very challenges of existence. Even with the tribe's newfound prosperity and power, Kale never forgot the days of relentless fear and cold. He often walked to the ravine where he and Lyra had escaped the rhinoceros, a place that served as a stark reminder of their humble beginnings. He would sit there, gazing into the chasm, reflecting on the journey from utter vulnerability to the strength his people now commanded. He instilled this memory, this hard-won wisdom, into the younger generations. He taught them that while fire was a powerful tool, it also demanded respect and vigilance. Complacency, he warned, was a predator far more insidious than any saber-toothed cat. The stories of their past, of the time before fire, became cautionary tales, ensuring that the children understood the magnitude of their ancestors' struggles and the value of the knowledge they now possessed. Lyra, now a strong hunter and a respected voice in the tribe, often joined Kale on these reflective walks. Their bond, forged in shared terror and triumph, remained unbreakable. Lyra, too, carried the memories of the cold, dark nights, and he echoed Kale's warnings, adding his own experiences to the tribe's collective wisdom. The tribe's influence continued to spread. Other small bands, struggling to survive, heard tales of the Fire People, a tribe that always had warmth, always had cooked food, and whose hunters were exceptionally skilled. They came seeking knowledge, offering their own meager skills and resources in exchange for the secrets of the flame. Kale, always pragmatic, welcomed them, teaching them the art of fire-making and the new methods of hunting and survival. Each new family strengthened the tribe, adding more hands for defense, more voices for planning, more minds for innovation. As Kale aged, his body grew weaker, but his mind remained sharp, his eyes still holding the spark of the innovator. He oversaw the construction of larger, more permanent dwellings, the development of more sophisticated tools, and the beginnings of rudimentary trade with distant, less advanced groups. He saw the first crude carvings, figures of men with spears and fire, etched into cave walls, a nascent form of art and record-keeping. These were not just practical advancements. They were the first whispers of culture, of a uniquely human identity. He saw his people not just living, but truly thriving, their lives enriched by shared warmth, shared stories, and shared purpose. The fear that had once defined their existence was largely replaced by confidence, by a sense of belonging and collective strength. The world of 1 million BC was still a dangerous place, but humanity, led by the enduring legacy of Kale's discovery, was no longer merely surviving it. They were beginning to master it. Kale, looking at the vibrant, bustling settlement, understood that his life's work was complete. He had brought his people from the brink of extinction, from the depths of being prey, and had set them on the path to becoming the dominant force of their world. The last fire was now an eternal flame, burning brightly for generations yet to come. The transition from nomadic wanderers to settled inhabitants marked another profound shift in the tribe's existence. Under Kel's guidance, and with the consistent warmth and light of fire, their settlements became more than just temporary shelters. They became true homes. The concept of a permanent dwelling, a place to return to store resources, to raise families in relative safety, took root and flourished. They learned to build more robust structures, using not only timber but also mammoth bones and hides, creating durable, insulated huts that could withstand the harshest winters. Each dwelling featured a central hearth, a smaller, contained version of the communal fire, providing individual families with their own source of warmth and light. This hearth became the heart of the home, a place for cooking, for crafting, for storytelling, and for quiet companionship. The ability to control and maintain individual fires meant greater comfort and a deeper sense of security for every family unit. The tribe's social structure also evolved. With more stable settlements, roles became more specialized. While hunting remained paramount, there were now dedicated gatherers, tool makers, hide preparers, and even individuals who excelled at telling stories or teaching the young. Kale encouraged this specialization, understanding that a diverse set of skills strengthened the entire community. Lyra, following in his brother's footsteps, became an exceptional hunter, known not only for his skill with a spear, but also for his ability to track and outwit even the most elusive game. He taught the younger hunters the refined techniques of using fire-hardened spears and employing fire to drive game. The children, growing up in this new era, were stronger, healthier, and more curious. They learned quickly, absorbing the wisdom of their elders, their minds unburdened by the constant primal fear that had plagued previous generations. They were taught to respect the fire, to understand its power, and to cherish it as the source of their prosperity. Kale, watching the bustling activity of the settlement, realized that they were no longer simply reacting to nature. They were actively shaping their environment to suit their needs. They had cleared land for rudimentary gardens, diverting small streams to irrigate their nascent crops. The surrounding forests, once an undifferentiated mass, were now seen as a resource: timber for building, fuel for fires, and hunting grounds to be managed sustainably. The tribe began to develop a deeper spiritual connection to the land and to the fire itself. The flame was seen as a gift, a sacred entity that sustained them. Rituals emerged around its tending, ceremonies to honor its life-giving power, connecting them to something larger than themselves. Kale, though old, felt a profound sense of peace. He had not just survived a harsh world. He had helped create a new one, a world where humanity could flourish, protected and empowered by the eternal flame. The first hearth was not just a pile of stones. It was the foundation of civilization. As Kel's hair turned to the white of mountain snow and his steps grew slower, his role shifted from active leader to revered elder, a living repository of the tribe's history and wisdom. He spent his days by the communal fire, observing, advising, and sharing the lessons of a lifetime. His presence alone was a comfort, a tangible link to the incredible transformation their tribe had undergone. Youngsters would gather around him, their eyes wide with wonder, listening to his tales of a time when man was truly prey, when the cold was an enemy and fire was a distant, unreachable dream. He spoke of the great rhinoceros, of the nights of shivering terror, and of the moment the first spark flew from his hands. These stories were not just entertainment. They were vital lessons, instilling a deep appreciation for the fire and the ingenuity that brought it to them. Old Nara, her face a map of ancient wisdom, continued to be Kel's closest confidant and the chief fire guardian. Together, they refined the methods of fire maintenance, ensuring that the flame never dwindled, that every ember was cherished. They understood that while the ability to make fire on demand was a great achievement, the continuous nurturing of a central flame fostered community, provided constant warmth, and served as a beacon for all. Lyra, now a mature and respected leader in his own right, often sought Kale's counsel on matters of hunting, resource management, and intertribal relations. The tribe had grown large enough that occasional encounters with other human groups, some friendly, some wary, had become more common. Kale, drawing on his deep understanding of survival and human nature, advised a path of caution but openness, sharing the gift of fire when it could foster peace and mutual benefit. The tribe's knowledge base expanded exponentially. They began to understand the cycles of the seasons with greater precision, predicting the movements of game and the ripening of fruits. They learned to identify more medicinal plants, using the fire to prepare infusions and poultices. Their understanding of the stars, their patterns a guide for navigation and timing, grew with the clear, unclouded nights spent around the roaring flames. Kale saw the seeds of agriculture truly taking root. They were no longer just gathering wild grains. They were actively planting, tending, and harvesting, a monumental shift in their relationship with food. The security of knowing they had stored food, preserved with fire smoke, for the lean months, brought a peace that had been unimaginable in his youth. The world was still a harsh and unforgiving place, but Kel's people faced it with an unprecedented level of preparedness and resilience. Their fires burned bright, their bellies were full, and their minds were sharp. They were not just surviving. They were evolving, adapting, and growing into something new. Kale, watching the vibrant life around him, knew that his legacy was not just the discovery of fire, but the creation of a future where humanity could truly thrive. His journey from prey to predator was complete, and the path he had forged would light the way for generations to come. Kel's final years were spent in quiet contemplation, observing the vibrant world he had helped to create. The tribe flourished, their fires burning brightly across the valley, a testament to his enduring legacy. He saw his grandchildren, strong and confident, wielding spears with fire-hardened tips, never knowing the terror of a raw, cold world. He saw them gather around the hearths, telling stories and sharing laughter, their faces illuminated by the dancing flames. The communal fire, the heart of their settlement, was now a roaring inferno, carefully tended day and night. It was more than just a source of warmth. It was a symbol of their unity, their resilience, and their mastery over the elements. Other tribes, once fearful and isolated, now sought alliances, drawn by the Fire People's prosperity and advanced ways. Kale had overseen the first tentative steps towards intertribal cooperation, brokering peace and establishing rudimentary trade routes, exchanging goods and knowledge. The world of 1 million BC, once a place of endless, desperate struggle, was slowly being tamed, one flickering flame at a time. The impact of Cal's discovery resonated through every aspect of their lives. Improved nutrition led to stronger bodies and longer lifespans. Enhanced tools meant more efficient use of resources and more time for other pursuits, like art and storytelling. The security provided by fire fostered a sense of community and shared identity, transforming a collection of individuals into a cohesive society. Kale often reflected on the sheer improbability of his discovery. A chance encounter with a peculiar stone, a moment of desperate curiosity, and the relentless pursuit of an idea had reshaped the destiny of his people. He had started as a vulnerable boy, a mere speck in a dangerous world, and had risen to become the architect of a new age, a true predator of circumstance. One crisp evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery hues that mirrored the flames of their hearths, Kale sat by the central fire. Lyra, his loyal brother and successor, sat beside him, their hands, now both gnarled with age, resting near each other. Kale felt a profound sense of peace. He had seen his people through the darkest of times and had shown them the path to a brighter future. His breath grew shallow, his eyes, still sharp, looked out at the bustling settlement, at the smoke rising to meet the stars. He closed his eyes, a gentle smile on his lips, the warmth of the fire, a final comforting embrace. He had transformed from prey to predator, and in doing so, had ignited the eternal flame of human civilization. His journey was complete, but the fire he had brought would burn forever, a beacon for all humanity, a testament to the power of ingenuity, courage, and the relentless will to survive and thrive. Cal's passing was marked by a quiet reverence, a solemn gathering around the central fire, which, in his honor, was kept burning brighter than ever. His memory was enshrined in the tribe's stories, his name whispered with awe and gratitude by every generation. Lyra, now the elder leader, carried on his brother's legacy with unwavering dedication. He continued to foster innovation, to teach the importance of fire and to guide the tribe through the ever-changing landscape of 1 million BC and beyond. The tribe, now known informally as the Children of Kale, or the Firekeepers, became a beacon of progress in the vast, untamed world. Their advanced techniques in hunting, tool-making, and resource management set them apart. Their permanent settlements grew, evolving into small villages, bustling with activity and a sense of shared purpose. The ability to control fire allowed for unprecedented adaptations. During the harsh, unpredictable ice ages that would sweep across the land, the Children of Kale were uniquely prepared. Their well-insulated homes, heated by hearths, and their ability to cook and preserve food provided a crucial advantage. While other, less advanced tribes perished in the bitter cold, Kale's descendants not only survived but thrived, their numbers steadily increasing. Fire became not just a tool but a fundamental aspect of their identity. It influenced their art, their rituals, and their very language. Words for warmth, light, and protection were often linked to the flame. The flickering shadows it cast inspired stories of spirits and ancestors, adding depth and meaning to their evolving culture. The journey from prey to predator was a continuous one, but the initial monumental leap had been made. Humanity, armed with Kale's gift, slowly began to reshape the world. They learned to farm on a larger scale, domesticating animals and cultivating crops, laying the groundwork for future civilizations. They explored new lands, carrying their precious fire with them, spreading its warmth and light to distant corners of the globe. Kale's discovery, a simple act of striking two stones together, had set in motion a chain of events that would span millennia. It was the spark that ignited human ingenuity, the flame that forged their resilience, and the light that guided them out of the perpetual darkness of fear and vulnerability. From a lone, shivering man in a hostile world, humanity had risen, empowered by the very elements it once feared. The story of Kale, the man of 100000 BC, who found the last fire, was not just the story of one man, but the dawn of a new epoch, an era where humanity no longer mere prey would stand tall master of its own destiny, forever illuminated by the eternal flame he had brought forth. The world would never be the same.